Give me your attention up here. This is a special part of our day. I'm Lori Schechtel. I'm the manager for environmental and regulatory compliance at Central SAN. And our first session this afternoon honors the memory of a past leader of BACWA, Arlene Navarrete, who we lost in 2012 after a long battle with cancer. This award of $2,500 to be used for professional development was created in honor of Arlene and her dedication to improving the health of San Francisco Bay. Arlene's unique combination of technical and regulatory expertise, coupled with interpersonal skills, resulted in success as she represented the BACWA membership on many initiatives. So today, on behalf of the BACWA Executive Board, it's my pleasure to present this year's award to Blake Brown from Central SAN, who I've obviously had the pleasure of working with the last several years, which is really, when I say pleasure, it's definitely been a pleasure to work with. Blake is Central SAN's laboratory program administrator, and as many of you know, she's become an integral part of the BACWA community. She's currently the chair of the laboratory committee and previously served as the vice chair of the laboratory committee. She has an incredibly strong commitment to protection of the environment and is an excellent collaborator, not just within Central SAN, but with the entire community. She's always lending a hand to her peers and providing guidance to help really achieve regional goals. So please join me in congratulating Blake, and I'll have you come up to take the award.
Well, thank you. This is a huge, huge honor. I wanted to thank Central SAN for encouraging me to participate in all of these activities, and also to BACWA for facilitating really a collaborative environment for sister agencies to communicate with each other. So I look forward to everything that there is ahead. So yeah, thank you.
All right, now it's my turn. Okay, probably just in the right height right now. Thank you. Before I start thanking our leadership and recognize for the various roles, I want to first recognize whoever planned the lunch today. You know, all the conferences I attended in the last 5 years, BACWA always is in the top of my favorite lunch or snacks team. I don't know what your experience, but thank you, BACWA team, for what you have arranged today. All right, with that out of the way, BACWA is a very small team. It's 3 people. You already met 3 of them. They're all here. And the success of our BACWA team relies on a lot of you who volunteer your time for various committees. Go away. I'm trying to put this one back. So we have 9 active committees, and they do a variety of work. I'm going to list many of them here. They review all the regulations that comes out. They meet with the regulators. They write comment letters. They prepare outreach programs for public education. They share information with the wastewater community. They also conduct field trips for promoting learning. And then they undertake special studies. They also conduct training sessions. They develop guidance documents. And they prepare white papers, reports, and they collaborate with other agencies outside BACWA. So here's my pledge to you today. If you are new to BACWA and want to be involved in the key issue facing our industry, please take a look at our BACWA website all the materials and meetings are posted, and they are available for you to look at, and email your interest to be part of any of these committees that you want to be part of. I highly encourage you. It is a rewarding experience. I know all of you have a day job, but this also gets you to build your network and be participate in issues that involves all of us. Thank you again to all the committee members that you see in this slide. I'm not going to be able to name all of you, but thank you all from the bottom of my heart. So now, can we keep that for a little bit? So everybody can recognize the names, and they're probably sitting next. All right, now we're going to shift to the next session about workforce development. And Lori, I'll have to depend on you for moderating them. I'm on the panel, so moderate it well. You will need the skills.
This will be a no PowerPoint panel, trying to make it a little bit more conversational. But workforce development, I think this is the topic that's really at the forefront of a lot of us in the industry. And I think we know that our industry is in the midst of, historic staffing turnover. We're being challenged by loss of institutional knowledge with a wave of retirements and difficulties onboarding new talent from, operations to the trades to engineering. And I know just in my role at Central SAN, in the last 4 years, I had 3 of my direct reports retire who had, combined, I think, almost 90 years of experience at Central SAN alone. So, our goal is really to make our industry attractive to newcomers who really have a passion for public service and the environment. And today's panel is here to discuss, some of the strategies that our member agencies have employed to overcome these hurdles. So I'm joined today by Amit, who will discuss East Bay MUD's outreach efforts and internship programs. Teresa Herrera, the general manager of Silicon Valley Clean Water, will discuss her agency's grant proposal to develop a workforce development pilot. And Jordan Damerel, assistant GM at Fairfield-Sassoon Sewer District, will discuss Bachwe's plans to expand their mission into supporting a regional internship program. And I will go first, and I'm going to only take up 4 or 5 minutes, so you'll have the remainder of the time. But I'm going to talk briefly about Central SAN's mentorship program, something that I've been very personally involved with for the last 2 years as a mentor. So a little bit about our program. Central SAN started a formal mentorship program back in 2016, and since then we've made a lot of adjustments and, as the program has evolved. The program, is about 18 months, but some go longer. I'm still meeting with my mentee. And the program assigns prospective mentees to mentors through an actual formal application process. And when we review applications, we're really hoping to accept mentees from all areas of our agency, all the different departments, and we're primarily looking for someone who's interested in personal and professional development and, really is, enthusiastic about the possibility of learning about new areas. Mentees get paired with mentors, typically at the management level, and then we also have technical mentors under the managers who work in the area of interest of the mentee. So I think one thing that's unique about our program at Central SAN is that besides the general, development of professional skills and the coaching, we really focus also on projects. And so these projects are determined between the mentee and the mentor together and, offers a real opportunity for the mentees to explore, other interests outside of their day jobs. And really make an impact to our agency, concurrently. So many of our projects end up being suggestions for optimizations, for example, and have gone on to actually get implemented. So I'll give you the example from the mentorship that I was, worked with, which was the mentee that I worked with was is a collection system crew member who was interested in environmental science and wanted to learn more about how our regulatory programs interact with, his work on the collection systems and how we protect our water bodies, the creeks and the bay and so forth. So together with my mentee and technical support members, and two of them are here, Colleen Henry and Blake Brown, who you just heard from, we developed a project that fulfilled these, very cross-cutting goals. So we looked at the needs of our laboratory and our collection systems. We looked at regulatory obligations, and we looked at his, professional interests. So in the end, it ended up being a real win-win. My mentee designed a new sampling plan for him and his peers to use for spills out in the collection system in compliance with the updated WDR. He updated the chain of custody forms to be compliant with the new TNI -2 standards for the lab, and he ensured that sampling procedures met federal preservation requirements. So, my perspective is that he really got what he signed up for, learning about how everything is sort of interconnected from the field where he, works every day to the laboratory to understanding regulation. And the culmination of this project was that he went and trained all of the collection system staff, both his peers and his supervisors on these new procedures. And in addition, each mentor goes and presents to our board of directors. So he also had a chance, we tried to make it as hands-on as possible. We wanted him to see other facets of the regulatory work that we do to protect the bay. And so he went out on a boat for bay sampling and helped, collect the samples. That's something that in my 9 years I still haven't done. So Blake, we have to get that on the calendar, especially in the nice weather. He went with our pretreatment inspectors on ride-along so he could see what happens, how we inspect a business like a restaurant, how that impacts the collection system and our treatment plan and, ultimately the bay. We were able to take him out to see our maintenance work being done on our outfall. So he, really got to see so many different areas of what we do and how it relates, in regulatory and how it relates to his job in the collection system, and really, wanted to encourage growth, right? I think he really took it to the next level and decided to enroll in school to get his degree. So I think these types of programs, we can't underestimate the impact that they have and the encouragement it gives for people to look at different areas of our industry. It's a great way, I think, overall to, encourage growth. And I think hopefully in the future, programs like this will have impacts on succession planning. So just a little bit about our mentorship program. And if anyone's interested in learning more, feel free to reach out. But I'm going to hand things over to Amit.
I haven't prepared that well.
I can pass it off to Teresa first if you want to.
That's okay, since you put me. So actually, there's a lot to be said about. You all hear me, right? About this workforce development, and I've been working with this for decades now. My previous job at San Jose, and also now at East Bay Mud, and there is a severe shortage of skilled engineers, technicians, and different trades jobs in all of our plants. We know. And the newer workforce that is coming out of colleges and schools, I see that there is not much interest in doing career in water and wastewater. And that's becoming more and more, prominent. And when you're going for, when you're going for recruitment, you don't get as many engineers, civil engineers, qualified engineers that are applying for your job, or qualified mechanics applying for your job, or any other instrument tech, operator, all these areas. So we have a serious shortage. So what we need to do about it? So one of the things I was going to focus on is outreach, what East Bay Mud has been doing, and then our couple of programs. One is internship program, and also another one is unique. It's a Worker One program and how they work. Why outreach is important. So, I started with my own family. I asked them, do you know what I do? and my kids say, yeah, you work at a, very stinky place like Shrek does, It's like, maybe because of my beautiful hairline and my dad bod, they compared me to a nice, a nice cartoon figure there. But they compared it because Shrek lives in a swamp and we produce swamp gas. So they thought, that's what probably the job looks like. And do we go to the high schools and schools to showcase our job? You know who goes there? The cops and the and the firefighters. They go there, and the kindergarten schools or elementary schools, they're heroes. That's what they do. They showcase that. And after that season, after I heard that, I actually went to my kids' school on a career day and showed them what we do. And that was a lot of interest from the kids. And when I showed the picture of my old plant in San Jose, I showed them the aeration basins, and I was showing them, they were blowing bubbles. One of the questions I got, how many people does it take to blow all that bubbles? This was gold, because these sparked the interest. And that's what I think we need to work on. At East Bay Mud, we do a lot of this outreach, and we do tours almost every week. Alicia is here in the audience right now. You can talk to her how we can connect. We do tours to community work groups, schools, high schools, even elementary schools. We're doing. They're actually coming to us our whole day. They're going to spend, and they're going to be eating lunch at the wastewater treatment plant. It's unheard of, but we're making it happen. And that's how you're gonna message to people, there is carriers, you're gonna make a difference in the community by working for water and wastewater. Water is life. So that's one. Another one unique is our Worker One program. Worker One, we have a different trades group. It's like electricians, then we have mechanics, and then we have instrument technicians. Those three I will name right now. And we have in-house training curriculum. So when we do not get qualified folks to get into these programs, this position can be flexibly staffed, so we can hire, let's say, electrical worker one. He's not quite journey level yet, or he's not quite the experience that we need in the industrial sector, so they come as electrical worker one. Then they get trained on the job. They have the skills because they have the knowledge of basic electrician's work, and they spend about 2 years. And after that, they are the one who's going to apply to your vacant electrician's position. In my previous job, we had wastewater attendant positions. We used the same kind of classification that would fit into all the different trade groups. And that training program, you have to develop it for your organization on site. And these training programs has to have all the knowledge, the transfer of knowledge from the previous, the core knowledge of the plant, core skills you have to do your job, and how you're going to test the skills. Because not just the person have gone through the curriculum and learned it, they have to demonstrate successfully that they can actually do the job. As my colleague used to describe working in a wastewater plant, there's many painful ways you can get killed in the job. You can drown, you can get burned, you can get chemical ingestion and then cough your life out. It is serious business. So we have to train our trades on these skills very, very seriously and demonstrate they can actually do the job. And you can leave them at night independently to do their work properly. So that has been going well. We have several interns that are now engineer 1-2s to associate engineers. We have the worker 1-2s just got promoted to electrical workers and electricians actually. And we have the OIT programs. We just promoted 7 of them, I think, to become full operators. So that's been going very well, and I wanted to share that. So 2 areas, I think that's what you wanted me to cover, right? The intern program, the outreach. One last thing I wanted to mention is one of the things East Bay Mud does very unique is we do these community water workshops where we teach very interested water community members to come and take a tour at our facility. We host them at different sites. Wastewater just hosted about a couple of weeks ago. They go to our Pardee, they go to our other wastewater water treatment plant, and they learn everything what EBMUD does. And there are educators, there are community activists, there are just people interested. Then they ask questions about, okay, how do I find careers in water and wastewater? This is what it looks like to work in a water industry. And that's going to go a long way. We do Water Wednesdays. That's another popular program. We do live, like a YouTube channel, where we talk about what is happening new in water and wastewater. There's a lot of interest in learning about nutrients, learning about new emerging technologies, and there's a lot of different levels of what do you call it, knowledge. People come and participate in this in meetings. Even though these are evening classes type, evening meetings, it's very rewarding. And after a long day at work, you think, you're going to be tired, but when you see the interest and you engage with the community, it makes all worth your time. And every time I go there, I tell them, it was tiring, but it was worth my time spending with all of you today. One last thing I want to mention. I think we ourselves, those of us who have been gray hair or no hair in the industry for a long time, we are the experts. Believe it or not, look around you. You are the experts in the industry, and you are going to be the teachers. So donate your time. And I encourage you to sign up as a part-time faculty or a part-time teacher at community colleges or at the local trade schools or at the, at the UCs. And donate your time, become a part-time lecturer, and share the knowledge that you have. We do at EBMUD, we partnered with UC Berkeley, and we do a CU1 civil engineering classes, and all of our engineers take time and they go on every week new topic, and we introduce, and the engineers get to hear directly from the experts in the industry. So there's a lot to be done, and I encourage you to take the time and do it.
All right. Thanks, Meet. Now we're going to hear from Teresa, who's going to talk about a grant proposal.
Whew, it's hard to follow me because you're such an animated speaker, so hopefully I'll be half as entertaining as him. So a lot of what he noted is, super important, and I think a lot of us are doing similar things, internship training, getting out as much as possible in front of public, especially getting the kids young, grade school, middle school, super important. And then also, giving back to the community, going out teaching at a community college or a high school. I wanted to talk a little bit about a program that we are seeking a grant from the EPA, and EPA puts out a workforce development grant, and unfortunately we haven't heard yet. They said they would let people know in 6 months, and then they changed it to 9 months, and now it's 10 months, but we're still crossing our fingers. And what we propose to the EPA is to put together a training program using augmented reality, using the Microsoft HoloLens as I don't know if anybody knows what HoloLens is. It's really, really cool. And so it's a way to create a augmented reality / mixed reality training program for any one of our processes or laboratory tests or anything we do. And I was talking to a friend of mine who has a high school age son, just went into high school. I said, "Oh, is he really excited about it?" And she's like, "Not so much, he really likes to just sit home and play video games." I'm like, perfect. We have this augmented reality, mixed reality program that we want to develop. And it's taken advantage of the effort that we've put over the last probably 5-6 years now of creating a basis in the Microsoft realm. So all of our programs now are Microsoft based, and so putting on this augmented reality on top of that is super easy because we have all the database already in our Microsoft programs. And so hopefully, wish us luck getting the grant, but even if we don't get the grant, we'll probably move forward with it because we have a couple of partners that are really interested in developing it with us. This is used up at King County up in Washington already. So I would encourage anybody to go on their website and take a look at what they're doing because it's pretty darn exciting. We have, one of the things we do is we work with the local high school, DTech, it's a STEM school, and we bring 5 to 6 junior or senior students to our facility for a 2-week period. And we give them various tasks to do just to introduce them to the wastewater industry and what we're doing at Silicon Valley Clean Water. And one of the things that we are introducing to them is this HoloLens, and they're excited about it. So, you know, reaching this Gen Z, we're going to have to go in that realm. You can't use paper. I'm using paper, but, you know, it's like, what is this? So it's really important for us to change our game up and reach the young folks who are going to be entering our field in the language that they know now. Whether it's video games, you know, transfer that to a HoloLens, you know, have a video game of a wastewater treatment plant, what the heck. So that's what we're seeking to do, and hopefully it's, hopefully we'll get the funding, but again, even if we don't get the funding, we'll go ahead with it. The other nice thing about this is that it's transferable to any wastewater treatment plant. So when it's developed at our plant, you know, anybody can use it. It's not specific to SVCW necessarily.
So before we get to Jordan, who we want to hear from, I just have a question related to that. So you are Silicon Valley, and you're in the heart of tech. And I know you mentioned the EPA grant. Have there been any efforts to partner with some of the local AI companies that are, you know, coming out of both Silicon Valley and San Francisco or partnering with them on this type of work?
Not necessarily with local Silicon Valley, but we are partnering with another firm that we use to develop all of our Microsoft. They're a Microsoft partner, so they're putting in funds towards this because they want to see it happen more and more, especially in the wastewater field.
That's great. All right, thank you, Teresa. Jordan?
Hi, everyone. Jordan Damerel, Fairfield Sassoon Sewer District. And for the last, 8 years or so, I've been serving on the executive committee of BACWI, which is the Bay Area Consortium for Water and Wastewater Education. I think I got that right. Want to also recognize our other executive committee members on BACWI, Chris Vinton from Central Marin, Monty Hamamoto from Silicon Valley, and then until very recently when he retired, Chad Davison from Ironhouse Sanitary. So BACWI is a special program of special benefit under BACWA. So Lori Yin and Jennifer do a lot of work to help us get our act together and stay organized. And what we've existed for over 15 years now, and what our focus is increasing the pool of qualified candidates to all of our jobs to work in the water and wastewater industry. And historically, we've done that by sponsoring education at local community colleges. And even more focused, we've really put our attention on water and wastewater operators as the main focus of that program. So for a decade or so, we would hold classes at Solano Community College in Fairfield, as well as Gavilan Community College down in Gilroy, and would essentially sponsor free classes for students to take technical water, wastewater 101 type classes. That worked great. We got a lot of interest. We got a lot of enrollment. We had a lot of people being produced through these programs that were looking for jobs. The problem is there's a lot of people now that are excited to get into the industry, and we're all looking for advanced operators. We need people to run our plant, to supervise our teams. We don't have the resources to support the entry-level operators as much collectively anymore. And so what BACWI is looking at is how can we expand this program? How can we change this program to really support the next generation of our workforce? What can we do beyond just classroom-based learning to facilitate people entering the field? So I wanted to touch real quick on a report that came out recently that I had nothing to do with, but I find it fascinating and a little bit sobering. It's from the California Community College's Economic and Workforce Development Program, and it's called the California Workforce Needs in the Water and Wastewater Industry. So if you haven't seen that, I think it applies pretty heavily to everyone in this room. So I'd be happy to share a link with you or just Google that. What this report did was look at mission critical occupations in the water and wastewater space. So focused primarily on electrical skills, on mechanical maintenance skills, and on operational skills. And they surveyed, looked at recent hiring data and looked at community college data to understand what's the need. So I'm going to throw some numbers at you really quick. Of those three categories of mission critical occupations, they identified that just within California, there are going to be about 4,400 job openings that we need to fill. We collectively throughout the state need to fill in the next year. And this is kind of an annualized number. So every year, 4,400 positions that we need to fill. They identified that through trade school programs, through community college programs, we're producing about 5,400 people per year out of these programs. So that's great, right? We have an excess. Here's the problem. Across all industries, these skill sets, there's a demand of 37,400 positions annually going forward. So we are competing not just with each other, and I know we do that a little bit, right, Vince, wherever you are? But we're competing with other industries that, you know, maybe private companies, maybe PG&E, may be able to pay more. So we need to do a better job of raising awareness of what we do, the positive benefit that we have on the world, on the environment, and really sell ourselves to our future job candidates. This report focused on 4 areas where we collectively should focus on, and I would love to tell you that we planned and coordinated this better than we did, but it's perfect. The 4 areas are awareness, so raising awareness of our industry, which I talked about. Diversity, reaching out to new pools of candidates that we haven't reached out to before. Partnership, partnering with tech companies to develop new skills, new ways of training. And skills, which is, you know, sharing knowledge across our organizations, developing new skills so that our employees, you know, have the skills to move up through the organization and be leaders in the industry. So we want to broaden the BACWI focus to address all of those areas. And so we're looking at what tangible things can BACWI do to help support us all collectively in achieving these goals and in increasing our pool of candidates. And so with the support of BACWA, we are working on an RFP to bring in some consulting services to really help us re-envision this program and look at a more comprehensive look at how do we raise awareness, increase diversity, look for partnerships, and develop skills within our existing and future workforce. And so at this moment, and it's still in draft, and we'll share it all with everyone when we get there, but the initial concept is that we'll have a data collection phase where we're going to solicit from all of you and your agencies, how many workers are you looking to hire in the next year, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? What skills are you having trouble recruiting for? What positions have you had open for a year and you can't find a qualified candidate? That's all useful information so we can help identify what the need is locally here in the Bay Area. And then really what we want to do is focus on what can we do collectively to address those issues, those deficiencies that we identify. We are a diverse set of agencies. We've got agencies with thousands of employees. We've got agencies with tens or fewer of employees, right? We're all doing the same basic function. There's nuances, of course, but we don't all need to go this alone. We should pool our resources, collectively seek to raise awareness of the water and wastewater industry. We think of ourselves as kind of competing against each other, and right, you know, I steal your operator and you steal my engineer. But really, we're competing against a much broader world, and so we need to keep that in mind too, and stick together. And if we increase the pool of our candidates, you know, it's that rising tide raises all boats, right? Let's all work at that together. One piece of that I think we can focus on that we'll explore as part of this study is really focusing on internships and apprenticeships, which we heard a bit a bit about here. The thought being that even a small agency with limited resources, if you can take on one intern, one operations intern, one mechanical intern, that's one more person that is developing skills that could be an entry-level worker for any of our agencies. And I would say there's a proportionality to that. So, you know, the larger agencies that can support more internships, you're probably going to train more people than you can hire directly. So let's all collectively work towards that and figure out how we can make that work together. One thought is we could pool financial resources and actually fund training of internships. So you could get a stipend back to your agency if you train an intern to work in the wastewater space. These are just ideas we're kicking around. I'd be thrilled to talk with any of you and hear your ideas. If you are interested in engaging further on this discussion as we move forward, please reach out. You can reach out to me directly, or Lorian can get you in touch with me. But this is what we're thinking. I think all of the great things we've talked about today, the nutrient work especially, is going to take new skills and human capital as well. We've talked a lot about the dollars, which are big numbers, right? We all know that. But we also need the people to run the facilities, and we're only as good as the staff we have. So thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, with that, one thing that, you know, the common theme that I'm hearing, you know, from the three of you and from our program at Central San is the creativity we're using and the innovation needed to be able to handle the needs that we have at our agencies and succession planning. At Central San, we start them young. I think it's about 4 or 5 years old. We just held our Take Your Child or a Child to Work Day about a week ago with, you know, I think it was almost 100 kids, you know, going on tours of the plant. And I only joke about starting them early, but really getting them interested in science and learning about wastewater as a possible opportunity as they go throughout their schooling. And we had kids from, I think, kindergarten all the way through high school attend. The laboratory puts on a great table with lots of experiments that the kids can do, like things that are eye-catching with different colors and things, and building, you know, making slime. And even those little things, you know, along the way have big impacts in the lives of kids. And, you know, high school students did some more advanced type things that day. But I think all the things that we're looking at here, just in this table alone, you know, are you know, will make a dent in our future. So with that, I think we have time. Lorian's shaking her head. So does anyone have any questions for us? Barbara, can we get her a mic? I'll do the mic right.
So Jordan, we go back a long time. You just reminded me that it was, what, 15 years? So 15 years ago, I started that partnership with 16 wastewater districts in Contra Costa County and throughout. And actually, I recruited you as faculty along with E.J. Shalaby and several others. So let me just chat with you a minute about how successful those partnerships were. When we took the curriculum from Solano and also Gavilan and offered it at a wastewater district, because when you're dealing with adults, they want the hands-on, they want the visual, and they want the knowledge, because then they can see how they apply it, and it becomes much more meaningful. So I think that those partnerships were effective, but it certainly did need somebody to keep them alive. Also, there are opportunities in high schools to build partnerships because they can dual matriculate when they're a junior and senior to take the courses they need at a community college, and probably partnership with that community college and a wastewater district to hold them on site. So there are lots of ways to do this, but I really think that you need that link with industry and education, because students are sitting in classrooms in high schools not having a clue why they're sitting there, taking algebra, biology, and all of those other applicable courses, because they can't imagine where they're going to apply it and why do they need it. So you're in a perfect situation to offer them that opportunity and capture them early on while they're making their decisions. And I certainly admire your internship program, and I'm hoping it's a paid internship program because these young people need to survive while they're trying to learn. So congratulations to you.
Thanks, Barbara, and I should have called you out before. Barbara is a longtime supporter of the Bakwi program and integral in the partnership we built with Gavilan Community College too. We had always been focused in the North Bay and helped expand that program to South Bay. So thank you. A couple thoughts. One is, yes, partnering with agencies and having your staff who actually make hiring decisions teach these classes. Amit mentioned this earlier. We need to share our knowledge with the next generation. We need to get them excited about it. And nothing's more likely to get them excited than knowing that they're being taught and can ask questions and can, communicate with someone who may be on the hiring panel that's going to select them for a job down the road. Secondly, the work we did with hosting these classes at wastewater plants. I'll say I teach at Solano in my spare time. Extra spare time. And I've taught the same class on campus in a classroom and at my wastewater treatment plant, where I could go down to the maintenance shop and raid the shelves for a mechanical seal and show them what that actually looked like in the real world. And it's so much more meaningful when they can see the part for real, when we can take a 5-minute break and go walk out to the headworks and see what it actually smells like, right? I can tell them in a textbook, but in Fairfield, the headworks doesn't smell, by the way, so. So, completely agree. Partnerships are key. And again, if we can work collectively with our agencies and with our community partners and with our educational partners, that's the recipe for success.
And I think that sometimes the piece that's missing is the broker. Because even though it's awesome, it takes somebody to implement it, somebody to broker the partnership, because otherwise it just remains a good idea.
And just to add really quickly to the Bakwi program, and I'm a huge fan because I'm going to embarrass her now, but Blake, who you saw win an award a few moments ago, found Central Sand and Wastewater through the Bakwi program. So I think that's really a testament to the success of Bakwi, and I'll just, with my bias of one of my teammates, but I think it's really, Blake is a lab program administrator, right? And we also use Bakwi as a tool for operators, and I think there are just many areas of our industry where it's useful, so.
I also want to reiterate, thank you, Barbara, for everything you did initiating it, and just stress your point that just having that ambassador, that one person that will take lead. Monty is very active on Bakwi and teaching at the community college level. We have another individual at SVCW, Matt, who's taken the lead on getting high school students in. So all it takes is one person to lead it, and then, everybody, all of our staff at SVCW, and I'm sure at all of our treatment plants, are excited to have kids come in and talk to them about what they do, but it just takes that one initial person to do it. So let's all be that one initial person.
Do we have any other questions? Does anyone in the audience want to provide an example of something innovative you're doing?
Comment. My son goes to Albany High School, and Central Sand came into his APES class. Was that you? Did you go?
No, not me, but thumbs up for
I don't know who
Central
it
Sand.
was.
It was probably Ben Lavender. So.
And because I came home, and he's like, Mom, he's like, there was someone that came from this wastewater treatment plant in Central Sand, and it was so great. And I said, are they, what's the next step? Well, he's like, I think they're going to come back. And I was like, wow, so just a comment, he loved it. He thought it was really exciting. To her point, what are the skills our kids are learning in school and how to apply them, get them excited. But I think the message for me was when he said, I think they're coming back and I'm really looking forward to it. So maybe just once isn't enough for these kids. So just kind of maybe have a program where you kind of visit more frequently.
Yeah, and we do have a pretty large program to that end, working with the schools, and I appreciate the compliments. I'll bring that back to our team because I think they'd really appreciate it.
Albany's really receptive to it.
That's great to
Albany
hear.
High School.
Yeah.
I have two things that I wanted to basically comment. Teresa is being very modest, but we have some more going on than what she shared. We also have an engineering internship going on, and in the last almost less than maybe 2.5 years, we have taken students from colleges. They have done, and we have constantly 2 to 4 engineering interns all the time working with our process engineer, and so far I think 4 of them have found real job or jobs in our firms. And I can say one went to work for Corollo, one has joined HDR, so 2 are ready to go. And so these are students coming from Stanford, spending half of the time. Actually, we continue as long as they can under CalPERS. So that's our limit. We have real lab actually going on where they are taking samples, collecting samples, running the test. So all of those things are going on at our plant, and we are producing real, helping them get their first initial jobs. And that is always the tough part, is when you graduate, finding your first job. Having that kind of a real wastewater treatment plant experience where they have touched the slab, we have sampled, analyze it, really helps in finding their job. So that was my first comment. The second one is, I seem like in the wastewater industry, Bakwi, you guys have money. Money is not a problem. You've been actually sitting on money and trying to spend, and you just can't. So I'm just trying to highlight that it's not the money that is problem. CWEA has hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're sitting on it, trying to find candidates to give out the scholarship. CASA has enough money trying to give out the scholarship. So, and so many other organizations, all serving the wastewater and wastewater industry. So when you talk about collaboration, this is where certainly we all need to do our individual efforts, but also a collaborative effort where you can see that how much funds available, and we're not able to spend all that fund because there's some collaborative effort needs to be done. So this is just an idea. I know we have talked in the sideline with Jordan and others through Bakwi to join forces, but I think that would be a good effort for Bakwa, CASA, CWEA, all coming together and doing something to reach out to a broader audience. Thanks.
I'll just say real quick, completely agree. There are a lot of parallel efforts going on. So one of my passions in life is to simplify and consolidate, right? So agreed, let's all partner, work together. We're all doing the same thing. But then to tie in Barbara's point as well, we need a champion and a coordinator to pull that together. I'm not saying a scholarship program is easy, but it is kind of a one-time effort. You give some money to someone and hope that they are convinced to come back to the water and wastewater industry, right? What we're talking about here and now is we need something more than that. We need something more involved than that, more regular than that. The comments on don't just come back once, come back again, that takes time and effort, and we're all, we've all got our day jobs and are volunteering in our spare time to do these sorts of things. So I think that's the piece we have to figure out, is how do we use our resources wisely, but be more efficacious with our efforts. So totally agree.
Looking
I
around.
like that word, efficacious. One of the things that came to mind is our current staff that we have, that all of us have, are also our ambassadors as they go and talk to their kids or their friends or family members. And, I think most of us have I'll speak for SVCW. We always seek to promote from within rather than going out to find somebody to bring in from the outside. So having that pathway for advancement within whether it's a consulting firm or a wastewater agency is super important too. And then those folks get the word out to their friends or their family members. Hey, I'm working at this great place. Why don't you think about doing that? And we just got a new operator whose uncle worked at Oraloma, and she was an OIT at Oraloma based on what her uncle told her about what a great profession this is. So, you know, we all are ambassadors, no matter, you know, as long as we tell somebody about it and about the great work we do. It's really good.
I was going to mention, there's a question. Before I get to the question, I had another interesting challenge that I have encountered. I don't know how common it is in other agencies, is new recruits and newer generation. There's a high turnover, and they are not staying in one place or one responsibility for too long. So it's hurting us because we spend time on training an engineer, or an entry-level operator, and then we see them going for a lateral position some other agency, or even within our own agency. And maybe it has to do with the retirement system we had to go to a new system. So it doesn't really mean much for, I guess, staying in the same organization for a very long time. Maybe that has something to do with it. Or maybe the newer generation gets bored really quick. Or I don't know, maybe we have to do something to spark the continued interest and focus on when we supervise and coach, that we talk about career development and opportunities in the area. If you don't, you're going to lose them. They're going to move on. They're going to go do something more exciting. And that's one takeaway that I am actually working with my supervisors to talk about it more. What is the career path looks like for you if you stay in your current job? Obviously, they want to grow, but you want them to grow in your organization. Don't want them to go to a different path. So that's something to think about. I haven't completely figured it out, but I was wondering if somebody else had the same experience.
So I wanted to say something before Amit, because I think I have that complaint. Like, how do you keep people in your organization? I think San Jose has trained half of the Bay Area. And we have lost all of them because the city cannot pay enough. So we are competing, and we're trying to make this case to our city manager. We are competing with the special districts. If I show people how much you make or Teresa make versus what we make, they say, we cannot pay you that. Yeah, but the problem is that somebody out there is paying that. So I have associate engineers that went to Valley Water and making the same as my principal engineer. So how do you really compete with that? And I think that that's like so bad, so sad for utility districts, right? But cities like Sunnyvale, myself, Palo Alto, we own the utility, right? So how do we have even like an extra handicap on how we compete when we cannot offer the remuneration that we have? And again, seriously, I go to Sunnyvale and all these other cities, we have truly trained half of the Bay Area. So again, that's a problem for us.
Yeah. So we have time, I believe, for one more question. Lorian? So this will be, I believe, our last question, maybe time for one more.
This is just Morgan is my name, but just, I wonder if expectations are a big part of this, like what they're expecting and learning in school, and how we're all being taught about the environment. We need to make real change right now. And they're coming in and not seeing that change as being part of happening as quickly as they think it should happen, if that's a part of it too.
No, I was going to say, in addition, I think one of the things, right, and I understand the struggle, like, with the cities not being able to pay as much, and I think different generations have different expectations, too, of their sort of quality of life and quality of their free time versus pay, and I think it'd be interesting to kind of look into that further in our industry, because there might be folks who say, I'm okay with that pay because I'm going to get double the vacation that my, neighbor does at another agency, or more of a flexible schedule, or certain incentives like that that may keep them there, that I know for our agencies, and obviously you have operators, right, that can't work from home and those types of things, and you have to reconcile that. But I do think a lot of that does serve as incentives for a lot of people, and you know, our industry. I think the pandemic created a real shift, and you know, every agency is different. And I'm only going to speak from a personal perspective, not from Central Sands, but I think, you know, and I see friends in the private sector too, is that, you know, we're seeing it now as a more normal way of business to provide some flexibility into our workplaces. So
I think to each of the last two questions, we can only control what we can control, right? So if the next generation is perhaps more mobile than previous generations, I'm not sure we're going to be able to solve that problem, right? So let's focus on what we can solve. And to your point at San Jose, it sounds like you have a great, well-developed training program because you've had to train so many people. And I think, honestly, that's what we all maybe need to focus on is, again, if we can work collectively and collaboratively and steal information from San Jose to the extent that it's applicable to your agency, that you trained on that too. But if we get in that training mindset where we can't expect that the average employee that we hire is going to stay with us for 35 years until they retire anymore. It's a new ball game. So let's develop the structure of our organization, the process of our organizations to, you know, unfortunately be more on the training cycle where we can get people up to speed faster. And perhaps to your question about, you know, the expectations of maybe a government job or a public agency job, I would say, and maybe consultants in the room, you know, earmuffs for a minute. There is a perception of public agencies, right? And of the type of work that public agencies do, and of the excitement level and speed. And we've all experienced different versions of that frustration throughout our careers, right? But we all know that the work that we put in, the serious conversations, the 10 years of nutrient permit negotiation or 15 years or wherever we're at now, right? It yields good things at the end, and it's worth that effort. And so I think we can just continue to tell our story, raise awareness of what it's going to look like, what's a job going to be like, and try to set the expectation clearer.
yeah. And on that positive note, I believe we're out of time, Lorian. So we're going to wrap up with this panel. If you have questions for us or thoughts or great ideas, come talk with us later. I just want to thank Teresa, Jordan, and Amit for joining me. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed this discussion.
That was robust. Sarah loaded up.
Okay, before we lose anyone else, that was an awesome panel. I just want to say to Mariana, we feel your pain. I think Hayward has trained the other half of the operators around the Bay. So my name is Jackie Zipkin. I'm the general manager of the East Bay Dischargers Authority, and I have the pleasure of being the vice chair of BACWA this year. And just wanted to thank everybody for hanging in there. We have some really great topics left to get through this afternoon, and so appreciate your attention. And while I have the floor, I wanted to just make two quick points. So the first one is I'm taking notes in this notebook that says meetings that could have been emails. Because a lot of times I feel that way on Zooms and so forth. This is not one of those meetings. And the privilege of being with you all here today and the opportunity that we have to share ideas and to have the networking over good food upstairs and to really be in community as we grapple with these big challenges that our industry faces is just a real privilege. So thank you all for being here. I know I'm getting a lot out of this. The other thing I wanted to say is, again, thank you to our regulators who are here. One of the terms that I didn't hear Tom say today, but I'm going to bring it up since it's his last meeting in his current capacity, is hard-ass collaboration. That is the theme of the work that the Water Board has been doing and the work that we've been doing together over the past decade plus. And it's getting harder, right? Because the problems are getting realer. But it would be an awful lot harder without that collaboration. So just wanted to put that out there to really thank the regulators who are still in the room, even though we're not still talking about nutrients, and just for all the collaborative work that goes on through our joint efforts. So with that said, we have two really important topics that we have yet to get to this afternoon. They're in different directions. We're going to talk air and water. And so I'm going to introduce our first speaker, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions, and then we'll come back and do the next topic. So the first topic we're going to talk about is air toxics. So you heard a little bit this morning from the Air District about their air toxics rule 1118. What we're going to hear about right now is a statewide effort. So not only within BACWA, but working with our colleagues across the state to inform regulatory efforts on air toxics at the state level. It's a really important program, and the person that's going to speak to us probably needs no introduction in this room. But Sarah Delorier, as a consultant, has been really key to all of BACWA's efforts: the BACWA Air Committee, the Bay Area Biosolids Coalition, the CASA Climate Change Program, and she's recently transitioned to a new role, working directly for CASA and representing all of us directly, as she has done in the past. But with even more force with the CASA name behind her, on climate change, energy, and air quality issues. So really excited to welcome Sarah to give us the latest on air toxics.
Is this going to stay? We'll see if it stays. All right, thanks, Jackie. I'm here to talk about one of the various kind of priority topics that we have that we're tracking as part of the Air, Climate, and Energy Work Group with CASA. And really the outcome impacts all wastewater treatment plants, so we want to get the word out through the regional associations and try and get as much participation as possible. So just going into that real quickly here, I'm going to adjust things so I can... All right, so air toxics, what we're talking about here is both the inventorying and the reporting of these air toxics or these compounds. And the programs about these different areas, the inventorying and the actual reporting, were updated in 2020. And they actually became effective January 1st, 2022. And we've been involved in the process since the program revisions or amendments were actually looked at. Is this going to... Oh, I'll be like going like this. Okay. All right. Let's see. I use my hands a lot, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, they're effective in January 1st, 2022. But we've been working with the Air Resources Board on this since about 2018, looking at the different updates for these programs. And the two specific programs are under Assembly Bill 2588, which was originally basically effective 1987. And it's focused on inventorying air toxics, but also what's required to support the risk assessments. And then AB 617 is all about reporting, as well as making sure that the emissions data is appropriate and what it needs to be, so that we can appropriately understand what potential risks are posed to receptors. And so I'm going to go into both of these programs in just a slide each to talk about what updates were made and why is that relevant for today. So AB 2588 is the Air Toxics Hotspots program. I did mention it was 1987, which originally enacted, but there have been updates since. And the most recent was 2019-2020. And what the program was originally trying to do was, again, collect emissions data, inventory that data, and really understand what kind of risks are posed to receptors. Program updates, though, they include going from about a list of 500 compounds that it was focused on to over 1,700 compounds. And there's a list that also includes PFAS. So, you know, we've been working on PFAS, looking at influent, effluent, biosolids. Well, there's a list in the regulation for wastewater treatment plants to actually look at PFAS compounds. And so we compared that with the State Water Board list, and it's a little longer. But as you know, methods are developing to look at those, and so that's a little complicated. So what we're concerned about is a lot of these compounds, including PFAS, have unknown toxicity levels, as well as unknown emission factors, and a lot aren't relevant to wastewater treatment plants. So we're trying to understand which of these are actually relevant to wastewater treatment plants, because AB 617, requires us to monitor and report those compounds. And so as we mentioned before, the reporting is really to understand long-term, what are we monitoring for? What does that look like? What kind of risk does that pose? And then can we actually put together reduction programs, emissions reduction programs that are protective of communities? And so when I talk about communities, originally when this regulation came out, or I guess the update in 2019 or 2020 came out, they had identified 10 priority communities where we needed to do this work fast and understand of these new compounds, what are we really looking at in terms of emissions and what kind of risk do they pose, and we need to get reductions quickly, because these updates were really in response to different environmental justice communities and overburdened communities speaking out about, hey, we don't think there's enough being done at the local level from the air districts. We want to see that everything also is harmonized across the state. So this gave the Air Resources Board the authority over stationary sources so that it could look at across the state, how can we harmonize what we're doing at a local, regional, and state level. And so this put the air districts and Air Resources Board in a position to have a relationship to understand this and really come together on how they're looking at their reporting. So with that, we have wastewater treatment plants in all these communities across the state, and we need to know, how do we comply with this larger number of compounds that we really don't know of those what we're actually emitting, but we have been reporting some folks have been reporting air emissions of air toxic compounds all along, but it's a very small subset. So how does that expand? What does that look like? What do we need to do? So we talked with the Air Resources Board as these program updates were being considered and prior to them being adopted, as CASA and members, but also with regional associations and their members coming together and advocating on behalf of the wastewater sector to really negotiate a phased compliance so that we could, in the meantime, report business as usual. Those of us who are reporting right now, continue with those compounds, but in the meantime, have some time to be able to run a process, looking at scanning the actual emissions from different processes to understand what of those larger group of 1,700 compounds is actually detectable. And then the second step, quantifying those detectable compounds to know what kind of a risk are we talking about. Are they emitted at levels that are going to pose a risk or not? And so in doing that and running that two-step process, that would then put us in a place of compliance with the Air Resources Board. So then by 2028 is when they want this, the wastewater sector to be able to start monitoring for those compounds and then start reporting in 2029 for those 2028 compounds. So, but we also need, as part of quantifying, methods, approved methods to be able to estimate those. And then also, we need toxicity potentials that are identified by OEHA. So we need to be having quite a collaborative process with the air districts who are approving the methods, as well as the Air Resources Board, and OEHA, which is listed there, the Office of Environmental Health and Hazard Assessment, to really have potential toxicity levels so that we can understand what the real risk may be to folks. So with that, do we know of a study, or have we done a study that before where we're looking at statewide what the approach is? Because what the Air Resources Board said is you can do this two-step process either individually as wastewater entities or as a group. And so we were talking to them about, well, it makes more sense for us to do this as a group, but where has this been done before? And the wastewater sector has performed a pooled emissions estimation program, PEEP, they called it, in 1989 and 1990, and that happens to line up right after when the original AB 2588 was released in 1987 with their original compound list, and they needed to determine which of those compounds were actually relevant, that were actually being emitted by wastewater treatment plants. So this was completed in 1990. The purpose, as this current study is to provide wastewater utilities an actual standard estimation methodology for those compounds they were found detectable and emission factors. But in this case, they were only focused on volatile organic compounds. And so we'll get back to that later because it's a broader set of compounds we're looking at for this renewed study we're going to talk about. So what did they do in terms of this statewide approach? There were 25 wastewater agencies that were actually part of a JPA that pulled this study together, and they looked at 18 different unit processes. And the unit processes were actually liquid, solid, as well as the gas gas management on site. And they're processes that are typical. So it's not one-offs, like say one agency has, a unit that they're using for, I don't know, processing biosolids like pyrolysis. That's a one-up. That's not a typical process you would see across different treatment plants. So we're looking at processes that are common to wastewater treatment plants across the state and in different regions. And then there were 20 sites, both in the north and the south, because they wanted representation from different regions, recognizing there may be different conditions that we're dealing with in the north and the south, but also in Central Valley. And what they consisted of in terms of their actual plan here is 3 rounds of sampling over 11 months. So they wanted to have these different, and they were done in triplicates. So they're really trying to get at good data, solid data they could use as a basis for generating emissions factors for each of the compounds that were identified as being detectable. This took about 2 years to pull together, just from a logistical standpoint, administrative standpoint, and then actually getting the data collected and then producing a report that was final and approvable by the Air Resources Board. And the budget then was about $2.5 million in 1990. So, and it was for one family of compounds. So just to prepare you for the estimates that are to come, which many of you have already heard of and seen in the paper, but some, which I've saw a lot of hands who are first timers, maybe they haven't, that's to prepare you. The result, though, was a short list of volatile organic compounds that were relevant to the wastewater sector and the emission factors that can be used in their reporting going forward. So the benefits of doing this as a statewide kind of pooled emissions study instead of PEEP, we're calling it PEZ maybe, I don't know, we'll see how it sticks. That's something that's important to a lot of folks, so we'll see. But the benefits include cost savings or avoidance, however you want to look at it. There is a difference, but we'll talk about that later. Cost savings through representative testing, so looking at a subset of wastewater treatment plants across the state instead of having, every one of the 145 plus that are triggering this regulation or reporting do that sampling analysis. We're having some real cost savings with looking at a subset of wastewater treatment plants. And then reduced administrative demands for covering that pool of folks versus the broader set. Streamlined project execution with single project manager. Again, statewide coordination of stakeholders. We have the Air Resources Board, we have air districts, the wastewater agencies, as well as OEHA and others. There's going to be a lot of coordination needed. There already has been in the advocacy efforts. So that's pulling them into one versus multiple different groups and having conversations, agreements as a single sector group that will be very valuable. And then identifying a single set of compounds. With this process being on one single group, again, you're having a single set of data that's coming out of that, data that's not conflicting, data that we've gone through the same kind of rigor, the same kind of analyses, so we can really count on the emissions, or at least the compounds that were identified, as well as the emission factors that are developed out of that. And then they'll be for use not just by the folks that are required to report now, but all folks that have to estimate the emissions for those specific compounds. If you're changing a process at your treatment plant and you have to have a modified source or new source or whatnot, these are going to be the emission factors for everyone to use. And so that's something to keep in mind. And we had, you're not meant to read that, but that was distributed. It was a single page back and front and back to describe the study actually, as well as the benefits in case you needed that for support in your conversations with your different managers and decision makers. So we have that for you in case you need it. But I know that BACWA's already distributed that also to all your members, and that's been really helpful. So CASA has agreed to be the fiscal administrator, so really supporting this overall pooled emissions study. And the details related to this study, as opposed to the PEEP that was done in 1990, there are a broader set of compounds. There's about 7+ families of compounds instead of the one family back in 1989 and 90. There are 145+ wastewater treatment plants that exceed the thresholds, which are flow thresholds, by which this regulation is triggered. So you would have to report if you exceed 5 mgd with uncovered primaries, or 10 mgd with covered primaries. Did I get that? No, I was right. And then we have a single project manager, which I'll talk about, who we've just hired and secured. The estimated duration of this is 3 to 4 years because of the time that we think it's going to be involved in doing the 2 steps, which I'll talk about in the next slide, but also an estimated budget of about $10 million for this, just because of, we also are including, in addition to the 7+ family of compounds, PFAS, which is very expensive right now to sample and analyze. And so we're expecting quite a bit of expenses in the quantification step. Ooh. And then CAS is working with the regional associations like BACWA here to coordinate participation. The 2 steps, I'll go really quickly. Phase 1, well, we can talk about the 2-step process, and it's going to be performed over 2 phases. That might be a little confusing, but phase 1 is super important in the coordination phase to basically develop over this year an emissions quantification plan. And that has to be approvable by the Air Resources Board and air districts so that when we go forward in actually sampling and analyzing, we know that that data is going to be accepted because we have an approved an approach. So then in phase 2, that's where a lot of the $10 million that we estimated is going to be invested for the actual performance of the 2-step process and quantification. An outcome similar to the last, but it's just broader in terms of compounds. It's finding the short list of compounds and the emission factors. And that is what's going to be used here. And Air District's Rule 11-18, health risk assessments, we need those new emission factors to be used in that process so that we can trust that information is current and the latest science. So quickly, this is tentative in terms of what the timeline is for the 2-step process or the pooled emissions study. And it's really trying to answer the question of how and when the Air District will use this information. What's relevant here is basically this. If you can tell, I don't think you can see my arrow now. It's bolded, but I'm not sure you can tell. The first arrow that's going down at the end there, that's when we project at 2027 when we'll have our final emission factors that'll be used by the Air District. Now, the Air District did, in 2022, put a projected timeline for how they plan to initiate the Rule 11-18 process with wastewater treatment plants. And when they plan to initiate, at least for one group, which has a prioritization score of greater than 100, which is shown as the first arrow down, that is starting at the end of 2024. But as Greg said earlier today, that timeline is pushing a bit. And so even though that we think that we need emission factors between 2024 and 2026, and we won't have them until 2027, in our response to comments from the Air District, they actually said that emission factors from the pooled emission study are expected to be available before the Air District initiates Rule 11-18 for all of you. So therefore, that implies the schedule is going to push beyond this 2027 when we're actually going to have the emission factors from this study. So just want you to know that. I know it might be a little confusing, but we want this for your reference so that you know they have stated that they are participating in this pooled emission study process and that we'll have those emission factors. So last, I'm just wrapping up here, Lauren. Participants of this study, those 145 plus folks, and the plus means some folks who aren't triggering the 5 MGD threshold are actually contributing as well. So we have this budget of $10 million as well as 3 to 4 years to do this. And there's a table of, for each fiscal year, from this fiscal year going forward, what we project per MGD, which is annual average daily MGD, what the contribution is per facility. BACWA is fronting this and has provided the contribution on behalf of its members for this fiscal year and next fiscal year, and is going to be invoicing you all through their invoicing process. So not to worry, that's all being managed. And as we mentioned, there's additional folks that have contributed from the area as well. And last 2 slides, study activities. We went over this. Participant outreach is underway. If you haven't heard from us, we have reached out, but let me know. We'll get in touch with you. We have monthly air toxic subgroup meetings. Next Wednesday is the next one at 1 to 2 p.m. And these are for all the participants to get updates regularly. We have formed a steering committee of the participants to guide direction here and decision making. We have a project manager, York Engineering, who's here. We have James York and Rangaraj, right behind, who are part of the team. We have phase 1 kickoff happening mid-May, which is very exciting. And then next steps, we of course continuing outreach. We have a broad set of folks that are participating. If you have invoicing questions, I put your name there, Lorian, for that. If you have study detail questions, let me know. please reach out to me. Again, we have our air toxics meetings, but there's also the BACWA Air Committee meetings for Rule 11-18 updates, as well as the state PES. We'll see how this response is. Will go, and that's May 29th, 10 to noon. And any questions I can take, I guess, later, or however you want to, or where you had mentioned.
We're a little
Sorry.
over time, probably because I did a rambling intro.
Oh, no.
So please join me in thanking Sarah. And if you do have questions, maybe she'll be staying for our social hour. So that will be that much more encouragement for you all to join us. So our last topic for today, we wanted to try to end on a positive note. You heard a lot this morning about the challenges of meeting nutrient requirements and the desire on behalf of all stakeholders to really invest wisely in multi-benefit solutions. And one of those categories of multi-benefit solutions is nature-based approaches, where we're working with natural systems to enhance habitat, improve resilience to sea level rise, and improve water quality all at the same time. And doing so requires complex permitting. It requires partnership. It requires a lot of things. And we've been really lucky to have some great leadership on the part of the San Francisco Estuary Partnership to really help us think through these challenges and advance our efforts. So while they get the slides up, I'm going to briefly introduce our speakers. We have two speakers on this. The first is Heidi Nutters, who's a senior planner with the San Francisco Estuary Partnership, and someone I've been working closely with over the past several years to try to move these projects forward. And without her tenacity and thoughtfulness, we wouldn't be as far as we are. So Heidi's going to give us an overview of some of the projects that she and her team have been working on with wastewater treatment plants around the region. And then we have Scarlett Kilpatrick with UC Berkeley and SFEI, who has really been moving forward an innovative concept to utilize wet weather storage areas of our plants to have dual purposes with nature-based treatment. So please join me in welcoming Heidi and Scarlett.
Thank you all. Really excited to finish off the meeting today with hopefully on a hopeful note, and I'll talk a little bit about also some of the on-the-ground challenges that we're seeing. So as Jackie mentioned, just for those of you who aren't familiar with the San Francisco Estuary Partnership, I wanted to give you a little bit of context. So the San Francisco Estuary Partnership is a place-based non-regulatory program of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. We're one of 28 estuaries of national significance across the United States. And a collaborative non-regulatory entity. We're based within the Association of Bay Area Governments / Metropolitan Transportation Commission, so it's always complicated to explain where I work. Lots of acronyms. And we implement something called the Estuary Blueprint. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it, but I promise you a lot of your work is reflected within the Estuary Blueprint. So the current version of the blueprint is both a regional vision, asking ourselves where we want to be by 2050, and an actionable strategy for what we can do over the next 5 years to get there. So the 2022 version of that roadmap focuses on wetland restoration, the restoring the health of the estuary, addressing its chemical, physical, biological, and social ecological processes. We have an entire action on nutrients. A lot of the nature-based adaptation work that I'm talking about is reflected within that overall guidance document. And just to sort of level set, because I feel like nature-based solutions is one of those kind of catch-all phrases, I like this International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN definition, which is that nature-based solutions leverage nature and the power of healthy ecosystems to protect people, optimize infrastructure, and safeguard a stable and biodiverse future. There are many drivers for NBS across our region. As you all know, the San Francisco Bay faces a complex set of challenges including sea level rise, which will affect harm to our recreational, transportation, infrastructure, residential, economic, ecological future, as well as significant challenges related to water quality. And we've heard a lot today about nutrients in particular and the harmful algal bloom in the summer of 2022. Nature-based solutions are an opportunity for us to address multiple challenges at once. In particular, we're focused on those challenges on the shoreline. So we're seeing an increasing urgency to advance these types of projects, to seek multiple benefits across the shoreline. A lot of our regional guidance is sort of driving us in this direction, including Plan Berea 2050, our Estuary Blueprint, the Bay Adapt Joint Platform, as well as BCDC's Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan, the RSAP process, which is underway and really sort of prioritizes a nature-first approach to shoreline adaptation, as well as you probably know state and federal executive orders really seeking, taking an approach that considers nature, green infrastructure approaches before going to sort of gray infrastructure approaches. So some of the types of nature-based solutions that I'm going to touch on are natural habitats that can provide buffering from storms and sea level rise protection, hybrid approaches such as living seawalls, ecotone or horizontal levees, and I'll define that in a second, treatment wetlands, and then Scarlett's going to finish us off by talking about dual process nature-based systems. This is a horizontal levee definition. How many of you are familiar with this term? Probably most of you. Yeah, great, thank you. And again, it's, I think, a term that people define differently. So just to be very clear, when I talk about horizontal levees, I'm basically talking about an ecotone that incorporates some form of treated wastewater or reverse osmosis concentrate. We're also beginning to look at the use of stormwater within these systems, but it's involving some kind of below ground treatment. I wanted to share these renderings. This is some work that Jackie and I did with Nate Kaufman that really helps people to visualize what a horizontal levee is and what it can look like on the shoreline. I really like this one because it's incorporating tribal and cultural benefits. So in this case, willow harvesting. This is something that we've talked to the tribes about as something that's of great interest to them in these areas and ways we can really think about cultural and tribal values as we're designing these systems and developing the planting palettes for them. So I love this beautiful picture of a horizontal levee on the shoreline, and I think we can all picture ourselves there. This is another rendering from Angela Stiegler out of UC Berkeley, David Sedlak's lab, who's now off and doing amazing things. On the left-hand side, we have kind of that conventional solution that I think many of us are familiar with. And I think of this as kind of a one problem, one solution approach. It's sort of protecting that wastewater treatment plant to a certain level, based on what's sort of the specifications of that system. And the horizontal levee on the right-hand side is providing a little bit more resilience to that flood protection through the use of wetlands that can buffer storms, as well as additional native vegetation, that water treatment layer that I talked about. So again, it's moving from a one problem, one solution to that multi-benefit approach. Oops, sorry, went too fast. Did I have one more? Oops, I'm sorry. I'm not good with computers. Anyway, this is just one final rendering that Nate Kaufman did for us. I like this one because it also talks about the ability to connect our marshes on the shoreline to adjacent assets that are really critical to build those connections around. So at the First Mile project at Oraloma Marsh that we're doing with Jackie, we're thinking a lot about the park that's just on the other side of the railroad and how we can build connections for the community between that park and this asset that we're working to improve. And by the way, I'm happy to share those visuals with anybody here who'd like to use them. So the Estuary Partnership partners with communities across the region to develop these types of projects on the ground. Many of you in the room, so I'm just really grateful to be here talking to you all. So we have a project with Fairfield Sassoon Sewer District, the North Richmond Living Levee, San Leandro Treatment Wetland, Oraloma, First Mile with the City of Hayward, and the Palo Alto Horizontal Levee. And I'm just going to touch on all of these quickly. The Oraloma Horizontal Levee project was built in 2015 to study water quality improvement opportunities. As many of you, how many have visited that site? Okay, well, if you haven't gone, come talk to me and I'll connect you and maybe we can take you on a tour. So there's 12 treatment cells at that site. We've reconfigured them in recent years to continue to study. So it's a living laboratory, an ongoing collaboration with UC Berkeley, Valley Water, Oraloma Sanitary District, and others. Initial studies there focused on nutrients as well as pharmaceuticals within wastewater. And we recently began studying PFAS, metals, and also reverse osmosis concentrate at that site. I just want to put a quick plug for the State of the Estuary Conference because we're going to have a session on this. And 2 of the graduate students from UC Berkeley, along with Jackie, will be presenting a lot more of the findings, particularly around PFAS and ROC that you might be interested in. So that was sort of the catalyst for a lot of other projects that we're now seeing on the ground. The next one I want to talk about is the Palo Alto Horizontal Levee, and we have our City of Palo Alto partners here. The goal of this project, again, is multiple at once. So improving habitat along a perimeter of Harbor Marsh, adapting to sea level rise, maintaining public access, ensuring perspectives from marginalized communities. There was a lot of community engagement that continues through that process, as well as providing this polishing treatment of discharge treated wastewater through the system. So a couple of highlights about this. This will really be the first horizontal levee built directly onto the shoreline that's discharging that treated wastewater into the bay. It implements several actions within our estuary blueprint. It really paves the way for future projects. I just had to change this because we're not sure if we're going to be able to build it this year. I'm sure many of you have experienced construction bids coming in high, so we're navigating that right now, and we might need to seek some additional funding, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. We also have a project at Fairfield Sassoon Sewer District, the Community Treatment Wetland Project. The initial vision of this project is to reduce nutrients going into the San Francisco Bay, adapt to sea level rise, and provide equitable access. I think the Fairfield Sassoon Sewer District folks just had a community workshop this week, I believe, and are really looking at this, the 2 alternatives that are shown on the slide here of, maintaining community access and recreation and maximizing habitat. I don't want to say those are benefits that are in conflict, but they're oftentimes a lot to put together. So navigating that for communities can be an interesting process. And finally, the First Mile Horizontal Levee, as I mentioned, next to the City of Hayward and San Lorenzo at Oraloma Marsh, which will utilize green infrastructure in the form of a horizontal levee to provide flood protection and critical refuge habitat, provide water quality improvement, and reduce flood risk for adjacent communities. I think that the First Mile project in particular highlights just how complicated these projects are in practice to develop, design, engineer, permit, build. This image just starts with the land ownership and the many landowners, the public landowners within one marsh. So you have East Bay Parks, State of California, City of Hayward, I could go on. So this patchwork of land ownership itself is complex to navigate. I'm sure many of you experience that on the ground. Historical uses, the permitting of these projects is not a straightforward path through. Sometimes there are mitigation requirements. There's complex public engagements, really important to bring communities to the table, but these are technical projects that are hard to communicate about. Stormwater management, and then really acknowledging that the long-term responsibility for O&M often sits with the landowner, and so really managing expectations for what that's going to look like in the long term is important. SFEP also does a fair amount of sort of regional capacity building. So we have something called the Transforming Shorelines Collaborative, which meets 2 to 3 times a year, so not that often, and kind of uses an expert consultation model for we bring projects or concepts and work with, across regulators, consultants, project proponents to work through those concepts together. So if you want to be added to that list, let me know. I'd be happy to add you. We also have a project called Regulatory Pathways for Nature-Based Solutions. So we're really looking at these permitting challenges in partnership with our regulator partners and trying to navigate them together. I kind of touched on a lot of on-the-ground work because we do a lot of direct partnership with our on-the-ground partners or at sort of the sub-regional or OLU scale to help advance these projects, really acknowledging that many of our on-the-ground partners already have a lot on their plates, and it's really a huge ask to champion new projects like these. We also have a wastewater equity working group of wastewater practitioners interested in applying principles of equity and community engagement to their work. We found that there's a huge demand for this type of work, and recently hosted, or last year hosted, a workshop on wastewater and equity and racial justice, and really found a lot of interest within the wastewater treatment community for this work. So Sasha Harris-Lovett on our staff is continuing to lead that. I also wanted to mention that we provide dedicated grant writing support for our CBO and tribal partners. So if you have community partners that need support to help engage in your processes, SFEP has staff time dedicated to that. And finally, I wanted to touch on the Bay Area One Water Network. You might be familiar with those convenings in the past that were managed through Renew It, which has sunsetted. And as I mentioned, Sasha Harris-Lovett has moved to the Estuary Partnership. So we've recently received funding to continue that process and look at future opportunities for the One Water Network. Before I hand it over to Scarlett, I just wanted to mention a couple of on-the-ground observations from doing this work. First, bringing together this skill set of sort of the earthwork restoration sort of component of these types of projects and the wastewater, the in-plant work is very challenging. It's challenging to navigate through the design and engineering process, and it's challenging to put these projects out to bid because of we have to bring those skill sets together. So we're really trying to understand how we can build capacity for all of our practitioners as we move through these projects so that we can basically make them, easier to build in the future. Also, even though a lot is driving us towards these solutions, so a lot of, planning incentives for nature-based solutions, there's not a lot beyond that, and they're risky to build. So we acknowledge that, particularly for the landowner, I don't think there's a lot of incentives out there. In order to address that, we definitely need a major investment, more in technical assistance to achieve the regional ambitious goals we have for nature-based solutions. We experience a lot of challenges around governance, permitting, and funding, although definitely all of our regulatory and funding partners are at the table trying to sort of navigate those challenges together. I mentioned we do a fair amount of work at sort of the sub-regional scale, and I really also wanted to highlight that this scale provides a lot of opportunity to engage and educate communities that are, neighbors to these processes. Happy to talk more offline with anybody about that. And finally, the best way forward we found is through leveraging partnerships. So really unique collaborations have come out of trying to advance these projects, and I'd say that's been a really exciting aspect of the work. So with that, I'm going to now pivot over to Scarlett, who is going to talk to you about dual process nature-based solutions. So thank you.
Thanks, Heidi. So I just want to talk briefly about a couple of other nature-based solutions that could complement the ones that Heidi introduced and might be able to fit well into existing infrastructure. On the left is a picture of a vertical flow wetland, which can sometimes be simply described as the horizontal subsurface wetlands flipped on their side, similar subsurface treatment capacity. And over on the right, we have a unit process open water wetland. This one is a shallow, unplanted flow-through basin that naturally grows a biomat on the bottom that has remarkably high nitrogen removal potential. These unit process open water wetlands specifically introduce the idea that many types of constructed wetlands can be considered as unit processes, meaning they lend themselves really well to a modular design, like the one pictured here, where we see a number of open water cells in series. There's also precedent in linking together different types of constructed wetlands in series depending on specific treatment goals. Whatever constructed wetland type is chosen is going to be site-specific depending on the groundwater table, the local geology, and available land. Considering available land brings me to the difficulty in applying any kinds of constructed wetlands to existing infrastructure. Pictured here is a snippet from an assessment that SFEI did, working with a number of local plants, assessing potential areas of opportunity both for open water wetlands and horizontal levees. Most of these plants, as you all know, are either directly next to heavily developed areas or sensitive coastal habitats, so land availability is definitely a limiting factor. Circled here in yellow at the Contra Costa plant was identified as the potentially most feasible area for an open water wetland, which happens to overlap with the existing flow equalization basin pictured here. As you all know, equalization basins are incredibly important for wet weather storage. So during the wet season, this land area is always going to be prioritized for storage. However, these equalization basins remain dry the majority of the year. Paired with the fact that harmful algal blooms are a largest threat during the summer months, the dry season is a great time to prioritize nutrient removal as well. So our proposed design is a dual-purpose equalization basin, which is essentially a seasonal treatment wetland in the footprint of the equalization basin. This would allow for the land to be utilized during the dry season when it would otherwise simply be dry for nutrient removal, while retaining the capacity for flow equalization when it's needed during storm events. We've conducted a preliminary feasibility analysis considering a variety of different types of constructed wetlands that could possibly be implemented in an equalization basin footprint, specifically considering the resilience to stormwater and wastewater contaminants that would be introduced during the wet season, as well as target nitrogen removal during the dry season, particularly their resilience to the first flush of a storm when you'll see these contaminants at their highest concentration, and then also considering the ease and feasibility of transitioning between this dry weather and wet weather operating modes. Here's a quick picture of the equalization basin at Oraloma in both its dry weather and wet weather condition. This has historically been piloted as an open water wetland for pre-treatment during the dry weather. So similar idea to what we're considering here. I'll share a memo at the end of this that goes into the design details that we're discussing, but I just wanted to share briefly a potential conceptual diagram here in the footprint of the equalization basin. So this is the wet weather scheme where we have a first flush tank to contain that most polluted first flush, protecting the downstream emptied at this time of year wetland, and then flow being rerouted to the plant. Once the wet season is over, you could transition to dry season operating mode where the treated effluent is discharged directly into the treatment wetland portion for nutrient removal. Key design consideration that'll be discussed in this memo is transitioning between these two operating modes. We've had some discussions with the water board on this front, and I've identified a couple of different options for flushing and monitoring, and have not identified any insurmountable regulatory hurdles with this type of design. So as far as next steps, we're quite excited about the modular design that these basins offer because it has the potential to fit well into existing infrastructure. It's also likely that many plants might want to construct new equalization basins in the coming year to increase storage capacity in the face of increasing storm threats. If new equalization basins are constructed to be dual purpose in this way, not only would storm storage capacity be increased, but nutrient reduction capacity would be simultaneously increased. SFEI is currently interested in chatting with plants for opportunities to either a case study or if anyone is interested in piloting a design like this further down the road. So this QR code here links to our full memo. I also have some physical copies, so if anyone has any specific questions after this or wants to pick up a copy, please let me know. And with that, I'll pass it back to Heidi.
Please join me in thanking Heidi and Scarlett, and I think we have just a couple minutes for questions.
just Heidi, coincidentally, I was just about to send an email to Sasha to see what is the latest on the improvement fund project. Has it been green-lighted yet? When might we convene the next step for the Bay Area One Water Network, et cetera? Because personally, I'm interested in being part of that startup while I'm still at the board, and even expect I'll play a role upon leaving the board. So is it likely that it hasn't been green-lighted? The fact that you're communicating to the public means you've got the award is communication of the award is no longer embargoed, right? And then I also just want to tell the group here that that BACWA is a key partner in the partnership, and specifically, there's one of the actions in the blueprint is all about nutrients. It reflects a lot about what we have. It's telling us to do what we're doing, or we're basically reflecting what we're doing. So let's keep up the good work.
Yeah, so we've been initially selected for funding, and we do expect an award in the next few weeks, actually. And that funding will include 100% design and permitting for the first mile horizontal levee, work within, as I'm sure you all know, work is situated within the Hayward Area Shoreline Planning Agency. So we're also going to be investigating the durability of that JPA to implementing these kinds of projects on the ground together. So developing an implementation plan for their master plan and an assessment of the kind of governance arrangements, and funding for the Bay Area One Water Network to complete a convening and sort of determine the path forward for the One Water Network. So hopefully we'll be able to kick that off and keep you at the table for that.
We probably have time for one more comment or question. All right. Amit, take us home. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That brings us to the end. By the beginning, I said you're going to get tired of me. I think you are there already right now. So I just wanted to mention a few things before we let you all go. First, a great thanks to our organizer, primarily Jennifer Diamond. Please give a hand. And our wonderful team at the Bowers Institute, David Bowers Institute. I know we had some issues with the AV, but we worked it out. Thank you to the team. I don't know if they're here. And of course, Mary Cousin and Lorianne. Thank you, BACWA. All right, so last things. At this point, every year, I ask you to do the survey. So for our annual meeting on the topics. But this year, we're changing for 2 reasons. First, last year, 100 of you attended this, and only stunning 4 of you responded to your survey. Thank you. I wanted to know who you are, and personally, thank you, guys. All right, and the second reason is our nutrient comment letter are due next week. I know it's a sensitive time. We didn't want to do the survey at the same time, okay? Take your time, take all your anxiety on the nutrient letter. So, Lorianne, you did something very clever this time. You actually asked, when they're registering, to ask for the areas of your interest and focus should be when you registered it. And here's the results. We have that. So that was very clever. Thank you for your responding also. So as no surprise, nutrient treatment technology, that's the first one. Climate change adaptation was the second topic. Communication on the value of wastewater, third. Workforce development, that's a big topic. And then, of course, we need money, funding opportunities. We need money for aging infrastructure, seismic improvement, climate change, nutrient, everything. We will look for funding opportunities everywhere. So I want to thank again all of you for attending and sticking to the end, and lively participations, and also controlling your emotions. I'm really proud of you all. you have shown great perseverance and patience in responding to the comments. I know these are really difficult subjects, and I'm proud of you all. So now we're going to go to what I call it overtime, okay? So we have a reservation made in next door, Jupiter, under Lawrence, your name. We actually have a patio area reserved, so some of the panel members will be available for further questions or continue to on your network. Have a great weekend. Thank you all.